Hello and how's it going, everybody? It is Skullzi here with the latest gaming news, rumors, and speculation. Today I want to break down why I believe Bethesda and Todd Howard and friends delayed Starfield. This news was a huge blow to the gaming community, especially the Bethesda community, and for some reason the Sony community, because they seem to be one of the more vocal communities out there talking trash about this delay. But nonetheless, I believe that there are some pretty good reasons why Starfield was actually delayed, which I'll break down in today's video. Everything I'll break down in today's video, though, is my own speculation, but I am fairly confident that what I'll break down today is exactly why Starfield was delayed. And on top of this, there has been an ongoing discussion in the gaming community regarding that Microsoft potentially talked to Bethesda to actually ask them to delay this game for a few reasons that I'll break down in today's video, and I'll give you my thoughts on why I don't think Microsoft is actually behind this delay. And we're actually going to start with that. We're going to start with Microsoft potentially having their own hand in delaying Starfield before I get to the three reasons why I believe Starfield was actually delayed, because this is going to be a quick one. First of all, no, I don't believe that Phil Spencer and Xbox asked Bethesda to delay the game, but a certain amount of the community actually believe this is the case, and this basically stems from Bethesda and Xbox sharing screenshots from the behind-the-scenes showcase, if you will, where Bethesda and Microsoft all sat together to look at what was essentially going to be shown this summer at the Xbox and Bethesda showcase. They basically were getting like a sneak peek and deciding what should be shown when, what should not be shown, and a lot of people believe that Microsoft saw Starfield during this behind-the-scenes thing and actually decided that, wow, this game looks buggy, it doesn't look complete, Todd Howard, you need to step back and you need to delay this game. And I don't think that's the case for numerous reasons. First of all, Phil Spencer and Xbox specifically have said that for most of their studios they maintain a pretty hands-off approach to managing the studios they own, and that goes especially well for Bethesda. Microsoft lets Bethesda do what Bethesda wants to do, and they don't really try to narrate or dictate big changes or different avenues of approach that Bethesda should take with their projects. So, because of this main reason alone, I don't believe that Microsoft or Phil Spencer or anybody in Xbox actually saw the pre-showcase footage of Starfield and decided, hey, this doesn't look good, you should delay the game. In fact, maybe Bethesda, Todd Howard, and friends actually asked Phil Spencer and Xbox for their input and asked them if it would be okay if they would delay the game. I believe that Bethesda themselves wanted to delay Starfield. For some reason, they realized that everything that they were working on would need more time to get polished. I'll get into that here in a second, but I believe Todd Howard and Bethesda actually approached Microsoft and asked if delaying the game would be okay. Not that Microsoft would probably say no or get upset, but just because of the entire dynamic behind Microsoft owning Bethesda, regardless of how much freedom Microsoft allows their studios, there still has to be a corporate-style bureaucratic approval system. So long story short, no, I don't believe Microsoft had anything to do with Bethesda delaying Starfield. I don't even think that Microsoft even gave Bethesda a definite answer. What they probably said was, you do what you think is best for Starfield and your team, and Bethesda then decided delaying the game would be fine. But why did Bethesda decide to delay Starfield? It's so bizarre, because Bethesda rarely delays a game like this. They have delayed projects in the past, but this is certainly a rare thing for Bethesda game studios. Especially so because Bethesda has been very, very vocal about how confident they are with this release date. In numerous interviews, they've said that they wouldn't have shown the release date in the E3 2021 trailer if they weren't very confident with that date. In a recent Ryan McCaffrey IGN interview, Ryan even gave Todd Howard an out, which I broke down in the previous video, where he said that, you know, release dates aren't really ever written in ink. Even though you guys showed a release date, it could probably be changed. And then Todd Howard actually cut Ryan McCaffrey off and said, no, that looked like some ink. We're confident in that release date. Only, oops, apparently they weren't, because here we are having Starfield delayed until the first half of 2023. We don't even have a definite date during the first half of 2023. I'll break down towards the end of the video when I actually believe Starfield will be released, but let's get into why I think Starfield was delayed. One of the biggest things I saw get brought up in the community, in that community discussion regarding Starfield's delay, is potentially it has something to do with Creation Engine 2. Perhaps Bethesda underestimated the amount of work it would take to properly polish and upgrade Creation Engine 2. However, I don't think that's the case case either. The Creation Engine 2 was likely created far before most of Starfield was in the main development phase. You kinda have to get the game engine done first before you make the game, and I think that if Creation Engine 2 was going to be this big issue and was going to lack a whole bunch of polish, that would have been identified earlier on in Starfield's development process, and they definitely wouldn't have shown a confident release date years later if it was related to the engine. Sure, Creation Engine 2 and Starfield could always do with polish. There is almost a never-ending polishing period you can have with game development. You could essentially polish and improve a game and a game engine forever, but I believe that Creation Engine 2, surprisingly, did not have much, if anything, to do with the delay. The number one reason I believe Starfield was actually delayed has to do with the flight mechanics, because we've never seen player-controlled or vast NPC-controlled vehicle systems in Bethesda Game Studios games in the past. Sure, in Fallout 76 and Fallout 4, we've seen like vertibird-style things, but those were very, very minimal AI-controlled vehicles. The player really didn't interact with those vehicles. The Zeppelin in Fallout 4 was mostly just a settlement that just floated around a map, not really a vehicle. A lot of the other stuff was AI-controlled, kind of running on the same artificial intelligence as drones and robots that fly around, if I understand. And in fact, in earlier Fallout games, the subway trains weren't even subway trains, and were actually just a character with a train on their head, so in a first-person perspective, it looks like you're in a train, when really it's just your character wearing a train head and running fast along the track. Basically, the Creation Engine in the past wasn't geared towards having anything vehicle-related within its system at all, or within any games that ran on the Creation Engine. However, the Creation Engine 2 and Starfield definitely has to have those systems, because Starfield is, as per a leaked statement from an ex-Bethesda developer, it definitely has player-controlled spaceflight, and many people assume that there would be player-controlled spaceflight within Starfield as well. And if you speculate even further, if Bethesda can have a game with player-controlled spaceflight, why wouldn't there be other vehicles as well? Because spaceships can fly up and down, sideways, diagonal. They have like basically unlimited direction of movement. Vehicles on the ground almost don't. If you're just driving a rover, it just can drive on the ground, like on the horizontal plane. There might be a jetpack system, but I doubt you're going to take a rover from the surface of a planet and fly it out into space. Even furthermore, we've seen boats in previous Starfield concept art, so maybe we'll pilot boats as well. My point of all this is, if they can get spaceships working, then there is a high chance for us to control other vehicles as well, and if we as the player can control vehicles, then NPCs have to as well. Otherwise, it would just be kinda weird if we're the only spaceship flying around out there without other NPCs in their own spaceships to challenge us or to interact with us. Because of this, I believe Bethesda Game Studios had to overhaul the Creation Engine in massive ways to allow Creation Engine 2 to have player and NPC controlled vehicles as a main mechanic within the game engine. Also, to piggyback off of that leaked ex-Bethesda developer statement over on Reset Era, they said the flight control mechanic kinda sucked, so I would imagine, like, look at it this way, if the ship mechanics in Assassin's Creed Black Flag sucked, that game wouldn't have been as good as it was, and if we spend a certain amount of time, a large amount of time in our spaceship in Starfield, and the spaceflight mechanics sucked or just was kind of boring or just then that would mean the majority of the game would also suck too. Bethesda would definitely want to avoid this, so I believe they're going back and they're overhauling and vastly improving and polishing the spaceflight and vehicle control mechanics. Which brings me to my second topic of why I believe Starfield was delayed. Polishing, simply that. One big thing with previous Bethesda Game Studios games, including Skyrim for example, was there is usually a large amount of content that Bethesda cuts before the game releases that the community never sees. Some of this content is wrapped up into DLCs and expansions, but for the most part, Skyrim had entire villages, quest chains, and NPCs, and even items that have never actually been officially released to the public. There are mods like the cutting room floor for Skyrim over on the Nexus that allow you to have a lot of this content returned back, but for the most part, Bethesda generally has a certain amount of content that's cut from a game before it's released. According to this ex-Bethesda developer over on Reset Era, they said that there probably would be a large amount of content cut from Starfield, and if Starfield is supposed to be this huge RPG, this huge open world set in space, you'd want a lot of game content to be in space to explore, otherwise it would feel especially empty, because space by itself is supposed to be this empty, vast place with interesting things you stumble upon. However, that wouldn't necessarily work for Bethesda Game Studios game. They have to have a lot of content within the game world to keep people interested. So I believe Bethesda wants to polish Starfield Starfield up and try to prevent from having to cut as much of this content as they might have had to do otherwise. And the third reason I believe Bethesda delayed Starfield is the most simplest: bug testing, bug fixing. They want to actually have Starfield have more time in QA, because we all know, even though Bethesda Game Studios open world RPGs are awesome, they tend to have some pretty bad bugs at launch. Bethesda probably wants to really avoid this for numerous reasons. First of all, Starfield is the first new IP, and the first new true next-gen single-player RPG they've released, so they want to make sure they get the ground running without bugs. And also, this is their first single-player game released, and I believe their first actual Bethesda Game Studios game that's been released since the Microsoft acquisition, so they want to make sure everything looks good. They want to do right by Microsoft and themselves, and they want to make a great first impression. So all this is why I believe Starfield was delayed, which I want to end the video on when I believe Starfield will be released. Sure, they said the first half of 2023, and that envelops anywhere from January to June, and Bethesda generally wants there to be a summer showcase shortly before the game releases, so theoretically, we might not see Starfield until June or even July of next year, if Bethesda wants another summer showcase to feature Starfield, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Summer release dates for video games tend to not be the best for sales, so judging by between January and June, that big time period, I'd say the thing that makes the most sense is March. March releases tend to do okay, generally not as good as, let's say, Q4 of a year, the end of the year during that holiday season when people like to shop a lot more, but Bethesda's release games in March in the past, so we probably most likely will see Starfield be released in March of 2023. But that's everything I wanted to talk about in today's video. I had a lot of stuff to go through today. Some of it was speculation, but I am pretty confident in my speculation today. But either way, let me know what you think about all this down in the comments below. Let me know why you think Starfield was delayed. And as always, if you enjoy the content, be sure to give the video a thumbs up, because it helps the channel out a lot more than you might think and helps the algorithm push my channel to be shown to new people. And be sure to subscribe and turn notifications on if you want to stay in the know when it comes to the latest gaming news. And finally, if you want to go above and beyond by supporting the channel and making sure I can continue to bring you content like this, then consider supporting the channel over on Ko-fi, Patreon, or here on YouTube as an exclusive channel member. Links for all this and more are down in the description below, as well as a link for the Skullzi Discord server and the Skullzi merchandise site. And as always, thank you for watching. Be sure to tune in next time, when a hype for Starfield is assuming a little less control now, unfortunately. But I'm still hyped, and I hope you are too.
It just works.